Our the reason I've invited our next speaker, Dan Hon from Mind Candy, is because I'm pretty fascinated with the use of digital offline. You know, I think a couple of the speakers this morning talked about how communities get created online, and then what happens? And then I think Niku sat in a friend's room for 5 minutes, never found a friend. And it's interesting. A lot of people come, but yeah. And then some people have come up to me and said how amazing it is to be here, because not because of the presentations, but because they've got to meet all their blogger friends that they've never actually met in real life. What Dan does is he's involved in gaming, alternative reality gaming, big gaming, where he helps brands, create experiences, get people running around using digital technology and real life technology to help consumers experience brands. So I'd like you to welcome Dan Hon.
Okay, so hi, I'm Dan Hon. I'm Chief Operating Officer at Mind Candy, and we produce a game called Perplex City, which is an alternate reality game. So I'll just give you guys a quick backgrounder on what it is that we do and what alternate reality gaming is, and then hopefully we can go into some Q&As towards the end of the deck. So, in a nutshell, alternate reality gaming is where we put together a compelling, interactive, cross-media form of entertainment. So what we do is we take lots of existing fragmented types of media like websites, like print, radio, real-life events, and then we build a franchise, we build IP on top of that to create an immersive experience that uses all of those different kinds of media to provide a kind of integrated experience. And one of the main features of that is that we use that platform, we use that integrated media platform to tell engaging stories. And the interesting thing about alternate reality gaming is that a lot of people, the casual gaming market is very interesting to a lot of people because the numbers there are much larger than what people think of as conventional gaming, so console type gaming. So you think about all the number of people who play Minesweeper on their office break or that kind of thing. The interesting thing about alternate reality gaming is that it involves a certain kind of role play. You don't have to learn any controls when you play an alternate reality game. If you know how to send email, then that's how you interact with characters in a game. If you know how to call someone up and leave them voicemail or navigate voicemail hell, then that's how you can interact with people in the game. If you can go out and meet people for coffee, then, again, that's how you interact with people in the game. We have set pieces in our games and also games produced by the other companies in the area where, for example, you might need to break into someone's email account. So if you know how to log into Hotmail, then you can take that upon yourself to try and work out what the character's password is, get into their email, and then read their email. And then from that, you'll be able to find out what happens next in the story. And as Piers said, what we do as well is we get you out into the real world. The interesting thing about what we do is that, fine, it's okay to use all this online capability, to have people getting into websites and then to have people looking at email and voicemails and stuff like that. But what we also do is we cross over into the real world. We use physical artifacts. So Perplex City essentially told the story of a $200,000 worldwide treasure hunt where our players, through clues that we disseminated online and in the real world, had to find the location of an object called the Ricada Cube that ultimately turned out to be buried in the UK. And then when they brought that object to us, then they won £200,000. As well, most of these games also run live events. So the biggest events that we've run, we ran a treasure hunt in London for about 300 people. That was about 4 times oversubscribed. And most recently, we did a co-branded game with BBC Radio 1 for their One Big Weekend, which had about 30,000 people in Preston, all participating in an alternate reality game. So again, with that, a kind of brief history of the other kind of alternate reality games in the genre and what's come before. You've probably all heard about the Lost experience that ran last year in conjunction with the TV show on Channel 4 and ABC. So that offered players a chance to look at or viewers a chance to look at the backstory of Lost, to explore some of the relationships between the characters, and also to give them a chance to find out exactly what was really going on the island. Good luck to them, I think. Not really a big fan of Lost at the moment. Heroes, on the other hand, is great. If anyone watches Heroes, just seen the season finale, which I probably shouldn't have downloaded. Hands up all the BitTorrent users. Excellent. So Heroes, again, this is something that NBC have done. They've created an experience called Heroes 360, where you can read the blogs of all of the characters. And for the TV show, they've created a character called Hannah, who's essentially a walking human BlackBerry. She can sense wireless internet and everything like that. So she's a perfect character for the players to get involved with online. They can help her crack codes, get into websites, and find out more information about the backstory of the game. As well, there have been campaigns for Aldi. There was a campaign called Art of the Heist. Microsoft did one for Vista called Vanishing Point. The canonical example is AI, which was a campaign called The Beast, produced by some guys at 42, produced by some guys at Microsoft, who subsequently became 42, one of the other big companies in this area. And that was a promotion where they created, again, this very deep, rich universe online where you could explore the universe that the AI movie was set in. You could interact with all the characters, you could email them, you could find out a lot more about the movie. It got a hell of a lot of press and illustrated one of the problems with these campaigns, which is that the campaigns themselves can be very, very compelling experiences. And it may not have been Warner Brothers' intention to have PR pieces going out or interviews going out with players of the Beast game where they said the movie sucked, but the game was brilliant. So that's probably what they weren't going for. At the same time, there was a campaign for Halo 2 called I Love Bees, which was essentially a 90-minute radio drama cut up into 60 to 90-second audio snippets and delivered to thousands of payphones around the world through the use of GPS coordinates. Most recently, there's also been a campaign for Trent Reznor's new album, Year Zero, 9 Inch Nails album, which again, there's some quite interesting effects with that. So if you stick the CD in your CD player and you start playing it, it'll warm up, as most CDs do when in the CD player. When it comes out, the CD's being coated in a kind of heat-sensitive ink, so there's a special message on there. And then if you read that message, then you get directed to a website, and it's all about kind of enhancing the experience. It's not just about listening to the music anymore. It's about, you know, Trent Reznor's got this vision of a dystopian future that he wants you to experience. Up until now, he's only been doing it through his music, but now he can do it through showing you this online world as well. And he can also do it through interactive voice phone calls and things like that. So on the online side, some quick examples of the way that we've been telling stories and the way that other people have been telling stories using alternate reality games. This is an example of, well, this is actually the site for our in-game newspaper, the Perplex City Sentinel, which we've been running for the last 2 years. It goes out twice a week. We make extensive use of UGC, so we've got the players emailing in letters to the editor, and we include them in the newspaper and all that kind of stuff. We've got a horoscopes column, which is very, very fun to write because we enjoy just fucking with people's heads. Here's an example of one of the sites from the 9 Inch Nails Year Zero campaign. So this is a kind of in-game future search engine. This is also one of the corrupted websites that you can read that will give you more information about the dystopian future that Year Zero talks about. And there's quite a funny story behind this site. This site's called Cognivia, and it's one of the in-game sites for Perplex City. It's a in-game drugs company. They sell drugs that make you smarter, so it fits in with the entire Perplex City universe. And we've had a lot of problems with this site. Because they sell drugs, they're made out to look like a drug company. At one of our player events, we wanted to get some custom M&Ms printed so that we'd be able to hand them out and that they would look like Serotin drugs, which are one of the things that Cognivia produce. So we called up the guys who make M&Ms and we said, hi, we'd like to order, so many thousand, and we need this printed, we need Cognivia printed on them, or we need Serotin printed on them. So they said, okay, fine, we'll look into that. And they got back to us a couple of days later and said, yeah, we've got this policy where we don't generally make fake drugs. We had a bit of a Google, and it turns out that you're trying to pass off these drugs from this drug company. So we had to say, yes, that's us. Why have you got a fake drug company? Long story. So that's the kind of thing that we get into. It's all about creating an experience where people can suspend their can have very good effective suspension of disbelief. It looks like a drug company. If you didn't know otherwise, you'd think it was a real drug company. But there are clues hidden in there that will advance your knowledge in the game and will advance the narrative as well. This is an example of one of the websites from the Lost experience. It's there's a guy called Alvar Hanso, I think, who's currently causing lots of problems with anyone who's got any half-sensible Lost theory for what's going on that island. So what alternate reality games do, they kind of take things back to the very beginning. They're all about storytelling. They're all about the power of good narrative and how that can be used to drive people to do certain things. So we've always loved telling stories. Right from the very beginning, you know, we've got examples of cave paintings and everything. We're a very social species. You know, we gossip a lot. We tell each other stories. We like to explain things about what's happening in the world in the form of stories to our friends. So that's all through our history, and we know all about that. But then you look at some of the things that have happened recently with new forms of media. So you've got Orson Welles' War of the World, where there was this guy, and he figured out that he could actually do something quite fun with radio, and he could scare the shit out of people by pretending that aliens were invading. And didn't really tell anyone that it was fiction. He just ran it, and people who were tuning in thought that, crap, aliens actually are invading, and as we all know, caused at least some degree of hysteria and panic. And that's the kind of thing that we're going after at the moment, or that historically ARGs have gone after. There's the ability for us to put stuff out there that looks like it could be true. So it's not necessarily hoax marketing or anything like that, but it's something that looks and feels sufficiently coherent and sufficiently self-referential that it reinforces itself as a kind of narrative universe. So we tell a story that actually makes sense, that's consistent in itself, and then people are very happy to believe that that world exists. And then, so again, you've got examples of that with stuff like the storytelling in the Matrix. And what we do, and the kind of thing that we like to do, and the way we would like to cross over into real life, is the scene from the first Matrix film where where Keanu Reeves gets a FedEx package, and inside there's a phone. And pretty much after that point, his life completely changes. It's like the movie The Game with Michael Douglas. That's the kind of experience that we offer. That's the kind of experience that we design into our games, where a package could turn up for you one day. There's a phone inside it, and you start an experience that's tailored to you that thousands of other people, hundreds of thousands of other people are playing at the same time, where you can get to be a spy, or you can get to be someone who can make a difference, and you can be someone who saves the heroine's life. And what we've found from this is that immersion, this degree of immersion, breeds untold degrees of passion. People who play alternate reality games become great evangelists. It's a very, very involving experience. What we found is that people get just so engaged with the narratives that we tell. We had a character who we decided to kill off just to see, well, partly just to see what would happen, which is quite fun, actually. So we killed this character off and upset a lot of our players, to the degree that some of them had been doing some reading and found out that in Japan a way of commemorating the dead is by folding paper cranes. So what they did was they got together, it was probably a bunch of students in the UK who probably should have been revising or something like that, and a few days later 333 hand-folded paper cranes turned up at our office to commemorate this character's death, because they felt so bad that they tried so hard to try and prevent her death and to save her in the story through a live event that we were running, but they failed, that they sincerely felt that they needed something to mark their relationship with this character. So that's the degree to which immersion can drive people to do things in our games. And at the same time, narrative builds ties between our products and between our consumers. These are an example of one of the other live events that we run is, we love putting people in peril, actually. It's great. So we had a story scenario where there was someone who'd been kidnapped. She was trapped in a room, and you had to persuade a security guard to let one of the characters in the game into the building so that she could go and save her sister. And the way we did this was that we set up a phone line so that you could speak to that security guard, and also that you could find out information about the security guard. So it was a kind of social engineering technique. And we had all these players who suddenly congregated together. They were sharing their notes. They set up their own chat channels. They set up their own wikis to compare notes. So they were doing things like, right, we know that he's got 2 kids. So someone try and threaten him to say, you know, we've got your kids. If you don't let us in, then, we're going to kill your kids. And they were testing all these different theories, and they were talking to the actor that we'd hired in to play this security guard to find out what would make him tick. And if you think about the kind of information that we can hide, and the kind of degree to which we drive people to find out the information in the narrative, we hide things, or rather we don't hide things in source code to web pages anymore, because we know that our players will find them. The very first thing they do, the hardcore players of this game, if they see some flash on a website, they'll try and decompile it. So they'll try and break it down to its source code to see what kind of clues can be hidden in there. So they're very, very driven and also somewhat psychotic, I suppose, sometimes. And it's all about the experience. It's all about creating this world that people can lose themselves in, where they feel that, you know, everything that they're doing matters. They get to follow these characters in their daily lives. You know, they follow their blogs and everything. They leave comments for them. They behave as if these people are completely real. They know it's a game, but they're still behaving as if these people are completely real. So this is a fun example of exactly the depth of passion that we inspire in our players. So we created a message using a code called RC5, which is a military-grade encryption protocol, right? You would need a supercomputer to break this code in any reasonable length of time. And what we decided to do was we encoded the message using that code that the players needed to advance their position in the game, to find out some crucial backstory. Our players obviously don't have a supercomputer, so they were slightly stumped for a few hours. They wrote a program, a bit like SETI at home, that runs on, at the moment, runs on thousands of client computers all around the world, that is dedicated to breaking this code. So that's the kind of, I mean, that's the kind of cooperation and that's the kind of passion that these games inspire. So that they've now got this computer program that they're trying to get running on as many computers as possible to essentially break a military encryption algorithm. So you can imagine the kind of things that you can inspire these people to do through games like this. They also, our players also live, eat and breathe Web 2.0. Obviously there's a continuum. Our players range from, say, 10-year-olds up into 80-year-olds. But for example, they've put together a player wiki. So as is common with most of these things like TV shows nowadays, they've put together a wiki. And what we would normally do, what you normally do when you're creating a property like this, is you have an internal story Bible, so you can keep track of all your characters, of everything that's happened and when it's happened. And very soon we gave up keeping track of that story Bible because our players were doing it for us. They've written over 4,000 articles now. They've got over 1,000 editors who are continually adding information to the wiki. They've tracked every single thing to do with any of the characters. So we just leave it to them now. We know that there's more of them than there are of us, and they care, well, they care about it a lot more than we do. They've even made a Google Maps mashup. So one of the things that we do, we sell physical products. That's one of the ways we monetize this. And on the back of each of these cards that we sell, there's a fragment of a map of a city. So what they did was they scanned all of the cards in, they did a Google Maps mashup, and they annotated it. We didn't have the time or the developer resource to do any of that, but that's the kind of thing that these people will do, because they know now that the next time they need to call up the police in the game, they can just look at the map that they've put online and then work out which precincts they need to send the police to. And they can do that through the annotated map that they've got. And all of this is completely UGC. We've got nothing to do with it whatsoever. It's kind of like, we've created this world, all this information is out there, go and self-organize. One of the fun things that our players did was they wrote a book. They wrote a 60,000 word book. Luckily, for Penguin, I suppose, it wasn't very good. Most of it was quite crap. But they still wrote a 60,000 word book, and they did it inside of about 3 weeks, because the story situation that we set up was one of our characters needed to get some information from the city library, and it was in a restricted archive. So the only people who could get that information were published authors. If one of your works is in the library, then you can get access to all the other works in the library. So our in-game character said, yes, isn't it a shame we don't have access to the library because we're not a published author? If only we were a published author. And the players thought about this for a few days. And then our character blogged and again said, I suppose what we could do is that I could be editor of a work that you guys wrote. And our players very quickly got the idea. So they got together, they put together another wiki. They wrote 60,000 words within 3 weeks. They had it edited, they wrote chain stories. And they submitted it to the in-game publishing house, who accepted it, of course. It was published. We actually did publish it in real life for print on demand through Lulu. So everyone who worked on the book also got a complimentary copy of it. The book was published into the in-game library, and the players got access to the content that they needed to further the narrative. So those are some kind of the examples of the kind of immersion, the kind of passion that we instill in our players. In terms of stats and demo, the interesting thing that we've seen with Perplex City and with our game has been that our breakdown of audience is roughly 40% UK, 40% USA, and then the remainder being English-speaking countries. We're very big in Ireland for some reason. We're not quite sure why. We've got people who fly over to the live events that we hold from places like Spain, Australia, the United States. So they come over for one day to run around Trafalgar Square and do a 300-person conga line. That's the kind of stuff that they do. Interestingly, our gender ratio is roughly 50-50 male-female. We suspect it even trends towards 60-40 in favor of females. One of the reasons why we think this is happening is because even though we have some fairly hardcore gaming aspects like the military encryption, there's a very strong story behind this. There are characters that our players can identify with. For some people, it's just like following a soap opera, only, you know, instead of watching it on TV every day, you can follow it through blogs, you can follow it through podcasts and that kind of thing. So we've made it much more accessible to people. And again, we've found that our median age is around 26, but again, we range from, say, 10 to 14 all the way up until 70. So you're probably asking, well, okay, how can these work? How can these work as advertising? How can these work as marketing? And what we found, and what a lot of people coming to Mind Candy have been speaking to us about, are there are narrative ways to weave products and brands into the narrative experience that we produce. It's kind of product placement on crack, really. What we can do is there are reasons why characters will need to use and do certain things in each of our episodes, in each of our games. It makes sense for them to use a phone to call people. So what we can do, and also combine that with the kind of stories that we tell, the kind of puzzles that we set for our players, we can require that everyone gets issued a Nokia mobile phone, and then what we can enable is kind of feature discovery and service discovery of all these products. It works especially well with things like consumer electronics, where we can look at the features that are perhaps underutilized because people don't understand how to use them properly. But as soon as we give people a narrative reason to explore those features, you know, that's strong enough. That will probably get people over the hump of actually having to open the manual and figuring out how to do this. Or even better, what it will do is it will inspire someone who actually does know how to use it to tell all of their friends how to use that feature, because then they'll be able to take part in the story more and they'll be able to advance the narrative as well. And again, this kind of interaction breeds tremendous loyalty. It's an experience that will stay with people for a very long time. What we've found with a lot of these games, and this is a very young genre, is that people who play these games get very frustrated that there aren't more games like this out there. Frustrated to the extent that they go off and they start making their own. Most of the time they're not very good. But one of the biggest successes was a game called Metacortex, which was a kind of fan-driven game for the final Matrix film. That actually had nothing to do with Warner Brothers whatsoever, but no one knew. Wired were reporting on it as if it were actually a game promoting the final Matrix film. One of the things that ARGs can do is, they can also be treated as a kind of IP franchise in their own right. So they can be thought of as, say, another Star Wars, another Star Trek, another Harry Potter, where if what you've done is you've created a consistent narrative universe, then you can do as much as you want in terms of product placement there. And you can do that in terms of a platform. So it's possible to invest in the time and money to put together this kind of exercise of world building. And we know from our experience that there will be advertisers coming to you, there will be brands coming to you directly and saying, right, we want to weave this in because we want to get our brand values over to our consumers in this way. And one of the things that I touched on was being able to drive foot and click traffic. When you have a situation where, again, I keep using this example, but a character's in peril and that people know that they need to find out some crucial piece of information to advance the game, or just in general, people need to find some piece of crucial information to advance the game, they tear through content. There's no way we can ever provide enough content for these people, for these players to get through. What they do is we know that within 5 minutes of a site being put up, actually they'll know as soon as we put a site up because they're watching. They know all the domains that we've registered and they're waiting for something to go up. They'll go through all of the source code flat, straight from the moment that the site's up. They'll check out every single link. They'll read every single article. They'll even find things that they weren't even supposed to find or that don't even mean anything. It's very much that kind of sense, possibly even a sense of paranoia, where a lot of these players, they'll start seeing things in images, they'll start making connections, and it's very hard for them to stop. But that's the kind of thing that we can do. So even in terms of real world events, we can say, right, there's going to be a clue in a car phone warehouse somewhere in London, and we can guarantee that all of those places will be flash mobbed. And we can even guarantee that, you know, it'll happen within the next 30 minutes. We'll give them a 30-minute window and they'll all be there, because they need to find out what's happening to get into the next phase of the narrative. And as well, at the same time, ARGs are hot right now. There's lots of PR coverage that they get. They're very interesting. They've definitely been very interesting to the press. The latest issue of Wired has some coverage on how ARGs are being used to promote television shows in the States at the moment. So that's a very much kind of whistle-stop tour of what alternate reality gaming is at the moment, who's doing it, and why you might be interested in it. So I guess we've got time for 1 or 2 questions.
Hey man, just say this stuff just blows my mind. It's awesome, but like, part of the experience of these games is that it's highly immersive and really kind of important to people.
Yeah.
How do you end them? Because surely the ending is always disappointing. You know, no matter what you do, it's always like how Lost is going to resolve at some point, going, they're all a dream or something. You know what I mean? It's like,
I mean, I think I have a personal problem with Lost because I think the writers really have no idea where it's going. In which case, any ending for Lost is just going to be. It doesn't actually have to be that way. I've got to say that a lot of the alternate reality games that have happened, everyone knows that they're a kind of roller coaster ride. Yes, they do end, but they don't end on a bad note. It's all about the writing. We're very lucky at Mind Candy that we've managed to. Our lead writer over the last 3 years has been Naomi Alderman, who's an Orange Prize winner. So we've been great in terms of the kind of writing quality that we get.
How do you guys make sure that someone who kind of comes in the middle of the game has the kind of experience? Because if it's kind of driven by foot traffic and real life events, say if I come in kind of 2 months in, how do I know what's going on? And when it kind of breed kind of culture where the kind of old school people, they kind of say, well, you're just a newbie, go to hell.
I mean, that's definitely something that we've seen. I mean, we've run the longest running alternate reality game now. It's been going on for about 1.5 years. So imagine coming in. It's exactly the same kind of problem that you see with TV, and we've learned a lot from TV that we'll be taking those learnings into the next season that we produce. It's like coming in halfway through Lost or halfway through a season of 24. Now, the way TV deals with this is they have a bunch of previouslys that they show. So they do a kind of 60-second, 30 to 60-second, last time on 24, all of this stuff happened. And you know that's just a problem that you get when you have a long-running complex narrative. The way that we're looking at it with alternate reality games is that we realize that there's this kind of inverted pyramid of interaction with our games. So at the very bottom level, we have small numbers of incredibly immersed people who do seriously crazy things, like send us 333 paper cranes. But at the top level, one of the things that we're looking at doing is essentially providing those 30 to 60-second weekly episode recaps, so that you can go and you can watch 30 to 60 seconds worth of video that will say, okay, this is all you need to know, really. And then you can catch up right now. So it's kind of like being able to buy the DVD box set and catch up and then watch the rest of the series.
One more question.
Not yet. Perplex City has been the first game that has had any sort of monetization and hasn't been an advertising or marketing exercise. All of the games so far have been tied to marketing campaigns. The interesting thing that we've done with Perplex City is that it's essentially marketing itself. So what we've been doing is we've been building up the IP in the world, and also we monetize that through the sale of related merchandise. So one of the products that we sell, we've got a board game that's to do with the city. We've also got a collectible card game that's a kind of bit like Magic the Gathering, Pokemon style, where you absolutely have to collect them all, which works very well. But we're in the minority. No, there aren't games that are charging right now. Electronic Arts tried a very long time ago, back in 2001, with a game called Majestic, which didn't work out for a number of reasons. And I'm not quite sure if a subscription World of Warcraft model is exactly right for this kind of game, because at least with World of Warcraft, you create the content. The content is created through the social interactions with the other people that you play with. With an ARG, if you're paying for it, I imagine that the players would be expecting a hell of a lot more content, and you can never create enough content for these kinds of people.
I was gonna ask you a question about EA's Majestic.
Yeah.
Because that game was pulled. Was
Yes.
that correct?
Well,
Was that because it went too real?
no, it wasn't. I believe it's because it really wasn't selling very well.
Right.
It was so part of the official story is that it was in development before The Beast came out, which was the first canonical ARG. It was rather unfortunate in that it was a conspiracy style ARG. It had an espionage type element to it, and it came out shortly after 9/11. It required, there were various technical requirements. It had a very kind of suffocating mode of play where you did one thing, you had about 5 minutes worth of gameplay, and then you waited about a week for the game to get back to you. So it wasn't very much a user-led, a player-led kind of game. It was very much when the game is ready to contact you again, then it will contact you. So there wasn't very much to do. And I think in comparison with lots of other subscription games like MMORPGs, it just wasn't an interesting prospect for people.